Get started. It's a couple of minutes after 5:03. Tonight's select board meeting. Welcome everyone to the select board meeting of February 20th. Quick summary of our agenda, call the meeting to order. Public comments, meeting minutes from our 2/6/24 meeting. Request to present by Erica Flynn, FY25 operating budget. Some discussion to some extent about Brattle Group and the LIPA proposal for 41 Lowell. Ballot questions and warrant for special town election. Appointment to Master Plan Implementation Committee. ARPA relocation request. Town administrators report singular, and item not reasonably anticipated or prior anticipated by the chair. All right, with that being said, we can get started. Public forum. Joni, nothing?
Maybe later.
All right, I'm gonna keep it on the list. Anybody got anything else? It's a general discussion. If there's something here that's not on our agenda or you want to bring it up, now's time. Okay. Meeting minutes from 2/6/24.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 2/6/24.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye.
Excellent.
Okay, next up, Erica.
Actually, is it okay if I just sit?
Yeah. Sure.
Absolutely.
Works for me. So, given what Groton and Dunstable are facing with the possible override and the school budget, I wanted to do some research and present just kind of what I found. So one of the things, let me just go forward. One of the things that was mentioned in multiple meetings is because of the revenue issues, adding more business would solve the problem. But when I went and did some research, I used Andover as an example. They have a lot of commercial businesses, but it would be a good example to use. So downtown Andover alone has 31 restaurants. Of those 31 restaurants, in the meals tax, it only brings in about $694,000 a year. So even if Dunstable decided, okay, we'll add 2 restaurants, assuming, kind of have to make an assumption that all of Andover's restaurants are making the same amount of revenue and paying the same meals tax. So even if we could add 2 restaurants, that's gonna bring in the meals tax, maybe $22,000 a year each restaurant, maybe, in a best case scenario. And maybe a few more dollars in permits and things like that. So that's one issue. So I think the kind of piddly dollars compared to what we're facing. Then one of the other, let's see. Nope, sorry, back. One of the other comments I think was a marijuana dispensary someone had brought up. So marijuana dispensaries can collect 3 different taxes. One goes to the state, one goes to the marijuana regulation committee, and then the towns have the option to collect up to 3% on their revenues. I looked up the average revenue for a marijuana dispensary in Massachusetts, and it's anywhere from 2.1 million to 2.5 million, best case scenario. So town could open 2 dispensaries, and still you're only gonna bring in maybe $175,000 to $200,000 a year in that tax revenue. So even if you open up the 2 restaurants, 2 dispensaries, it still doesn't even come close to solving the problem that we currently have, never mind potential in future years. So it would seem kind of ridiculous to rely on that to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of before I move on to the school budget, even if you have businesses, it's only gonna have a minor impact on local revenues, because most of the local revenues come from either excise taxes or property taxes. Dunstable property tax rates are the same for both residential and commercial. When I went and did my research, many towns have a commercial rate that's more than double the residential rate. And they're the ones that are able to keep their residential tax rate lower. So that's something maybe that the town could look at, is raising the commercial property tax rate. So my recommendations is, one, to raise the commercial property tax rate. Stop buying land for conservation, because the more land we have for conservation, the less homes can be built. And I think I've mentioned it before, to attract and build a smaller homes for singles, childless couples, and seniors, as they're only gonna have a positive effect on the revenue with no effect on the expense for the school. And if larger homes are still gonna be the focus for building, which seems to be the case, they're only gonna exacerbate the problem, because they're meant for families with kids, where you're gonna add expense and not as much revenue. So that's kind of just an overview of the kind of the revenue piece. Moving on to the school budget, which everyone loves. So I kind of go all over the place here, so bear with me. So I started looking at the SAT scores. And I've highlighted in red the towns that Groton-Dunstable Regional School District uses as their market basket, but I've kind of got a hodgepodge of towns here. If you look, of these towns, 6 with lower cost per student had higher total SAT scores than Groton-Dunstable Regional School District. 3 out of the 4 top towns with the highest SAT scores had lower cost per student than Groton-Dunstable. Provincetown spends over $40,000 per student. They're ranked at the bottom 50% of Massachusetts public schools. They have a student-teacher ratio of 6:1, and their average teacher salary is actually quite similar in Groton-Dunstable Regional School District. They have an average math proficiency score of 17%, an average reading of 42%, which I think we can all agree is not great. And they're spending $40,000 per student. Then, if you go even further, and you look at SAT scores by state, every single state that has an average SAT score higher than Massachusetts, their cost per student is lower than Groton-Dunstable Regional School District. Just to give you a idea, Groton-Dunstable Regional School District's average SAT score for 2022 to 2023 was 1208. So you have all these states that are spending less money per student and they have higher SAT scores. So all the research that I've said, that I've looked at, clearly states that a family's educational level and their wealth is a better determinant in how successful they are in life and how well they do on the SATs. Because education, yes, plays a part, but it's a smaller part. Then going forward, I looked at the cost per student in public education from 1990 to 2020 in constant dollars. Could not find the data from 2020 to 2024 in the constant dollars, so I did not want to put it in there. It's not comparing apples to apples. But you'll clearly see, since 2014, there's only been an increase in cost for public education. Same thing if you look at Groton-Dunstable Regional School District budget by year. It's only been an increase for quite some time. Then, if you start looking at the average, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, average reading scale scores in the same years, you'll start to see there's been, again, you have to remember the increase in public education funding. You'll see the scores have actually gone down. So that's the reading. Same thing for the math nationally. Scores have gone down. So you got increased spending, but scores are going down. Then, clearly shows here, this is again nationally, for both reading and mathematics. In reading, they had the largest drop since 1990, between 2020 and 2022. Again, significant increased funding. And they had their first ever score drop in mathematics in 2020 to 2023. Then, kind of a little bit more focused here, you look at Massachusetts. Same thing shows that student performance has declined since prior to COVID, so they can't blame COVID on it, it started prior. This is for grade 4, mathematics and reading, they're both significantly dropped over the years. Then if you look at the same for grade 8, again, significant drop over the years. Then if you, even more focused, if you look at Groton-Dunstable Regional School District, again, both math and reading, significant drops from 2016 to 2021, despite a repeated increase in funding every year. This, and I know it's an eye chart, I tried not to do it, but both the, what was the other thing? Net student spending, thank you, and the foundation budget. With a few exceptions, there are a few exceptions. The foundation budget has increased consistently, as well as the Chapter 70 aid, and our actual spending is still increasing. So we're getting more money from the state and the Chapter 70, but we're just increasing the spending so much that it's causing our costs, our local costs to go up as well. Then everyone talks about the teacher salaries. Again, I kind of tried to go into everything I had heard in the comments and the different budget review meetings. The Bureau of Labor Statistics analyzes the skill requirements for different jobs, and then they assign each a pay grade based on their general schedule. At the lowest skill levels, a GS6 on their scale, teachers earn salaries about 26% higher than similar white-collar private sector workers. At a GS11, the highest skill level, it's a little bit different. They pay 17% less than white-collar private sector workers, and that's why shortages exist for the specialized positions. Also, so when they average it out, average public school teaching position rated an 8.8 on their general schedule. After adjusting for the time that they spend outside the classroom, so they're actually including time outside the classroom after the day's over. Their data shows that public school teachers, on average, receive salaries about 8% above similar private sector jobs. So they're not underpaid, and that's just their salary. It also goes on to mention that the New York Times reported about the retirement and health benefits, which I'm sure everyone is aware, they're bleeding states dry. When they're talking about teacher salaries, they're not including their benefits and their pensions, which are significant. And then also, if you look down here, the average US wage increase from 2007 to 2021 was 46%. For that same time period, the average Groton-Dunstable Regional School teacher increase was 70%. Then you start looking at the student ratios. So the student-teacher ratio, despite kind of a fluctuation in the number of students, has stayed fairly stable. And the paraprofessional ratio is hard to look at because I don't know the amount of students in the district that need the paraprofessional help. So I'm really not going to touch the paraprofessional number. But the student to admin ratio, and this includes the district support number, you'll see that it stayed fairly constant despite a change, just decline in students, as well as in FY 2018, they outsourced the custodial staff. That support number should have gone down. It didn't, because they just added administration positions. And so it never went down. It should have gone down, and I believe if my brain is correct, I believe it was 10 positions that they outsourced. So they added an additional 10 administration positions that same time. So then going further, they just hired the new superintendent. I don't know if that's a completed deal yet or not, but my understanding is they made their choice. And that the annual salary is, let's see, $225,000. If you look at this, some of these towns have double the tax base, double the student base, and yet their superintendents are making significantly less. So why would we offer that amount to a superintendent? Seems significantly excessive compared to some of these other towns that they use for their market basket. Then, talking about excessive spending. whether they agree it's excessive or not. The national average student to guidance counselor ratio is 385 to 1. Massachusetts average student to guidance counselor ratio is 364 to 1. The ASCA, I'm not even gonna say what it means, but the American something guidance counselors, their recommended student to guidance counselor ratio is 250 to 1. Groton Dunstable's is 121 to 1. You even remove 9 guidance counselors, 9. Assuming an average salary of $75,000 per year, some are less than that, some are more, you're saving $675,000 annually. Then, if you go and look, it's very, very difficult, I found, to compare apples to apples when looking at town school budgets because they all do them differently and they all classify things differently. But I was able to kind of identify some for health services. In fiscal year 24, Bedford, Massachusetts had 2,481 students and they spent $508,000 on health services, which is $204 per student. Belmont had 4,424 students and spent $1,028,000 in health services, which is $232 per student. Groton Dunstable had 2,351 students and spent $735,000 in health services, which is $312 per student. You remove one nurse, you save $65,000 on average a year. Then we have my favorite subject, Boutwell Education Center, which I was not aware until recently that is only pre-K, which is not mandatory. Their FY25 is $75,000 a year. So why is this falling on the average taxpayer when it's not a requirement? Also, universal pre-K programs have been repeatedly rejected, which speaks to how some of the majority of voters feel about the issue. And if the public education can't improve the middle and high school test scores, it makes little sense for taxpayers to be shouldering the burden of pre-K, especially since all those links down below and significantly more show that 4-year-olds in pre-K actually cause harm. They have increased anxiety well into their mid-20s, by the way. They have behavior issues, they have lower test scores, and they have lower attendance. All the links there you click, they say the same thing. Then, in my research, I found that many towns, Andover, there's actually a whole list, the data can be found in the link that I've provided, that charge transportation and athletic fees per student, where you're putting a little bit more of the cost on the people that are using the school system. Now, when I was going through the 100-something page budget book, they do have some items that are listed as fees, but they really weren't detailed as to what those fees were for, so I could not tell what they're charging fees for. But I did not see any sort of transportation fees, so why can we not do something like that? So conclusion, I don't think more money is having a positive effect on the testing, clearly based on the data. There's no accountability, so why would you want to chase good money after bad? If the scores are going down, even with increased funding, we want to give them even more money? That makes no sense to me. I think before an override, there's plenty that can be done to increase revenue, such as, again, changing the commercial tax rate. And there can be expenses, some of the expenses can be offset by charging the fees per child, be it transportation, athletic, materials and transcripts. There's all different types of fees. And I think that both towns, Groton and Dunstable, they need to push back on the school system to cut some of this funding that clearly is out of whack. And then, last but not least, there's supplemental reading about school funding versus the public school system. And that's it. Unless anyone has any questions, I should have.
Mr. King?
So I appreciate the presentation and the stats and things like that. have you shared this with the Groton Dunstable Regional School Committee?
No, my plan was to post it on both the Groton and Dunstable pages.
So I encourage you to do the same presentation with them, because much like our highway department, they bring the budget to us and then we approve, not approve, ask them questions. But I don't know enough about the education system to understand how many administrators are necessary or how many guidance counselors are necessary.
All the data is right there. It says what the averages are.
Sure, but I'm not at their meetings to make a motion to say we should have one less guidance counselor, in that sort of siloed topic. But
isn't it the responsibility of the towns to push back when we feel that their expenses are excessive?
yeah, so you're more than welcome to, post the information online and create a campaign and run for an office to help sort of set the change and be a part of the school committee. Really, like that's probably your best vehicle to get change, is to be on the school committee. We're all volunteers doing the best we can with the time we have, and I know that took you a lot of time. So I think
you're time just to get through the data.
Yeah, and the data is like data picking, so it's like you can spin data any way you want these days to make it applicable. As someone who did stats for a private boarding school,
this is data. That's different. Stats is different. This is showing raw data.
But again, you can skew them anyway. Like I did this for a private boarding school. Like they said, all right, here's the data, spin it so it looks like X, looks like Y. Like you can do it any way you want.
I looked at all different sites. Test scores are going down, funding's going up. Every single one. Maybe not the exact numbers, but every single one.
So there's also theories now that test scores and the usage of test scores are not valuable for many students that are learning in different ways.
Oh, of course they're going to say that, because the test scores are going down.
But your NAEP is saying the same exact thing. Like they're saying that the validity of test scores is being tossed out the window as a metric for evaluating a student's abilities.
That's crazy.
It's what's happening across the board, because some kids can't take tests. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's.
With all the paraprofessionals and the behavioral analysts and all these extra folks, mental health folks that are now in the schools and now they can't take tests. What they're saying is they just want more money at this point. That's all they want. And they have no accountability for it.
So then you really ought to pull papers to run for school committee. I think you'd be a good voice. You'd be a contrarian to a group that really likes. There are some people who love to spend money in that group, and I love spending money. I'm a terrible budgeter, so my wife doesn't let me be in charge of the budget. But you probably need a voice on there to be more of a constrainer than just writing blank checks. Because that's how I got inspired to run for selectman, was let's try to do something. Let's get a plan for the town. Let's take this master plan. Let's take whatever to actually make some change. It's taken a while to get there. I'm a lot grayer than I was when I first started. But I think, you've pulled together a lot of good information, and I think that would be my sort of thought from it as a quick recap in terms of my digestion of it right now.
I think they have another budget forum coming up.
They do. They have two more, I think. In regards to business and taxing commercial differently, fundamentally, we have the general store and farmhouse. I know we have some other at-home businesses and such. Yeah, and different, MSR, different businesses in town. Like, I don't know if we have the capacity to run a commercial tax rate. Like, I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
So shifting the burden doesn't generate more revenue; it just shifts the burden. You still can only go up 2.5 plus new growth. So if you shift more to commercial, they'll pay more, but it will reduce residential taxes. And the impact on commercial, especially in a community like Dunstable, which has very, very small commercial base, if you shift it just 1 point, the impact on the commercial properties is gigantic. So the decision locally has been to not do that, because it just doesn't make real sense. Until you have kind of a commercial base to speak of, it doesn't really make sense, but it does not increase overall revenues 1 cent. It just shifts the burden.
Makes your Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee like $7 now rather than the $4.50.
So we couldn't decide or have the town vote to double the tax rate, we wouldn't be allowed to do that? To double the commercial tax rate, I should say.
So let me just rephrase that, all right, if I can, okay? If we're going to raise the commercial tax rate, the savings, and it would be a savings, would be to the residential taxpayers. It doesn't increase your overall revenue stream. The revenue stream stays the same. It's just that the commercial taxpayers pay more than the residential taxpayers. And so that there's no real benefit to that. And we have so few commercial businesses in town that we would essentially be just kind of penalizing them, for lack of a better expression. And so for all the years that I know of, we've never opted to have a split commercial tax rate, because it would be very unfavorable to the few businesses that we do have. And somebody like West Auto would be paying significantly more money. And, you know, that in of itself, that's West is a small business. It just doesn't, I mean, I don't know what his volume is, but it's not a lot. And we would just be financially injuring him more than anything else. So this board and all the other boards have just decided that we were not going to split the tax rate.
Here's a question.
Yeah, go ahead, just,
Don't want
we'll
to,
get to all the questions, just,
I get you don't want to financially injure the small businesses, but no one using the school system seems to have any problem financially injuring the folks not using the school system. And that's my problem.
okay, so let me say this about that, all right? First of all, I agree with him. You did a lot of work, and you got to get a high five. You just do, because when I read reports like that, the first thing I look for is how much data mining has been done, all right? And what the sources of the data mining are. And you've obviously done a lot of that and put a lot of time in it, and kudos. We have for a very, very long time, all right, and some of the older folks are here, right? We have for a very, very long time been in conflict with the school in general over the management of the school. And in a lot of cases, we can't seem to always get to the right answers. We have a very difficult time driving change. The school is owned by the two towns disproportionately. Groton owns 70% of it, Dunstable owns 30% of it. The school committee is charged with the management of the school. That's their job, not us, they do. And some of this stuff that you had here tonight, we've had recent discussions with them over it. And, you know, there's always I don't want to sound off with this, but there's always a justification for why they're doing things the way they're doing things. We typically don't micromanage the school, but at the same time, we haven't had something like that is collected and strategized to it, because that, in my mind, there's some strategy to that too. It's strategized to how you put that together. And so what, to Karen's point, is that I think that the appropriate thing for us to do is to take a look at this as a board in the next few days to a week and send this to the school department and the school committee coming from us, and request that they reply more specifically to some of these matters, all right? You know, I'm gonna tell you that Dr. Cheshire has said on more than one occasion that the slippage in test results is directly related to the virtual learning thing, which went on for however long, okay? Well, you know, we don't really have, you know, I do anyway. I listen to that, and I gotta kind of accept it, because she's the CEO of that school. She is. And if she's gonna make those statements, then I'd like to believe that I have some faith in her knowledge and her understanding in her presentation, that she's saying that what it is what it is. But they have pointed to that there. And I think in general, the education industry has had a lapse in this over COVID and maybe probably some other things. And I just don't know that we've drilled it down to this extent here. And so, given the fact that you've brought up a number of significant issues that are pointed to the right data sources from what I'm looking at, so I think they are. I read through this the other day, and this tonight kind of helps out a lot with that. I think that what we're going to do is digest that here, Erica. All right, Leah is homesick tonight, and maybe she's watching us on TV. I don't know, but she's homesick tonight, and so we're going to ask her to participate. And what we'll do is our next Selectmen business meeting, we're going to rehash this one more time after we've all had an opportunity, understanding that the objective is that we're going to go back to the school committee through our reps and to the school leadership team and ask that they reply in some fashion, whether it's in an email or a return document that's going to explain some of these things and why they are where they are. And you know, I drove through Groton the other day, and they got a huge banner up in the center of town looking for, if you've been through there, they're looking for paraprofessionals and teacher substitutes and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, they're looking for a whole lot of positions. It isn't like they're looking to fill a couple. It's like a bunch. And so I sit back and scratch my head and I go, well, they must have had a lot of people leaving, because I don't know where that is coming from in terms of, if you had an org chart, right? You got 6 positions. It's headcount, right? I don't know where they're getting all that from, but I just looked at it. So on a going forward basis, on our behalf, I think we all appreciate this, and we're not going to lose the track of this. We're going to do what I said. We're going to digest it. We're going to give it to Lacey and Raphael at the same time concurrently, so that they have an opportunity to see it. And then we're going to send it to the school board. After we've had a time to digest it, we'll send it to the school board, school committee as a group, and as well to the leadership team at the school, and work to get some answers to these things that make sense to everybody, right? Because, you know, when Dr. Laura says to me, you know, this is all a result of COVID and virtual learning, I kind of accept that, because we've got nothing that says otherwise. In terms of the superintendent's salary, you know, this guy was just hired maybe a month ago, roughly about that. And I kind of raised an eyebrow over the salary myself. I know, but nonetheless, they had some criteria behind offering that guy what I think is a fairly healthy salary for a school of that size. That's you know, but I mean, that was their decision. So I do want to get an answer to that, because I only became aware of his salary about 3 weeks ago. And I certainly scratched my head at it going, that's an executive level salary. I get it. He's running a district, but it's by comparison, not all that big. It really isn't. We might think of it as, but it isn't. So I don't know how they got to that, and whether or not there's any other perks that roll into that, because as you pointed out, she's talking about salaries and not total compensation. And there's a lot of perks that go with it that reflect to that total compensation package, you know. So let's see where that goes. And I do appreciate the thought and the maturity and the sophistication that you put into this. I absolutely do.
And anything I can do to help, let me know.
Okay, we're gonna take some questions first. Tony, hang on one second.
Yeah, you're saying that the superintendent knows that the reason for these scores going down, because they're looking at video, they're doing this, they're doing that. What have they done as the superintendent or the school committee or anybody else involved in the school, made changes to increase the scores?
You know what? I can't answer that question because I don't.
It's 3 years, but somebody should
Yeah,
answer.
it's been gone. I mean, COVID's been gone a little while now, and you'd think there'd be some recovery, but, you know, quite frankly, you get into this discussion, and I get it a little bit from working in corporate so long. There's this thing called the flywheel effect, where a change that you make today might take some period of time in the future to affect or have an impact. I get all that. Sometimes this can tie out to that, but I'm gonna tell you, I don't know. I'm not a professional educator. I don't know, but we can certainly ask those questions and get those answers.
Well, I was a professional educator for 35 years. We had meetings recently, all the time, about scores. And we made adjustments to increase the scores. Evidently, I don't see an adjustment here to increase the scores at all. And that's going on for years. We keep on paying more tax money, but the scores don't go up. Why is that?
Yeah,
I would think that the new superintendent would have the answers. I mean, if you're paying him that type of salary, he must qualify for some type of expertise.
I would not disagree with that thinking. But I haven't met him yet. I was not part of I don't think any of us were part of
No, he hasn't been sort of show ponied around yet.
Yeah, he hasn't been, we don't really know the guy very well, and, we've not had a discussion with him. I'm not sure if he's under contract at this point either.
I don't think so, because Dr. Chesson, I think, finishes June 30th.
Well, this,
Year-end contract, so.
yeah, I don't know whether the school board has extended him a contract to start July 1 or not. I don't know any of that, but let's, we'll, as I said, I don't want to repeat myself, but we'll carry this forward to another meeting. I'm going to go back to taking questions. Mr. Flynn.
Just like to make a couple of points. First of all, the only direct correlation I can find, all of these statistics came off of state websites, Department of Revenue and Department of Education. The only direct correlation between SAT scores and anything else appears to be people in the town. So the higher the professional rate, the higher college educated over 25 and a higher number of professionals, that has a direct impact, and it just comes out off the page. So the town is actually contributing to the SAT scores a lot more than the education system, is what it looks like. Because if you go into the poorer towns where you're only down around 14, 15% people that graduated from college and 3 and 4% professional rates, numbers are down in the 8, 9 range in 1,000, as opposed to where we are. The other thing is, as far as commercial is concerned, the overall tax base, for the school to ask us as taxpayers to compete with these other towns is just, you might as well try to compete with Zuckerberg or Musk or Buffett or whatever. Bedford has almost double the tax base that Groton and Dunstable together have. So how can we compete with them? You want that, go to Bedford. Then you can take, literally, spent a lot of time in Bedford in my middle years. And right now, I would say it would take you 40 minutes to go from the intersection of Hartwell Avenue and Concord Road and get onto North Road to get to Route 3. And that's what you get. So you want tax rate. And the other, I don't even understand the inclination to have these restaurants. You've got, if one of those restaurants, first of all, the liquor stores, 0.75% goes to the town, is my understanding. So if each of those liquor stores sells $1 million worth of liquor, that's $7,500 for each of those stores in the kitty. What is the benefit to the town? It doesn't seem like you can possibly balance that out. And yet that's what is proposed. These things don't make a lot of sense when you go up high and go down.
Mrs. Simmons?
I think we've discussed before the fact that every town around us, even the town of Lowell, has one tax rate. Okay? The point being, to not discourage your businesses, you know, that's all we've heard at all these meetings, you know, when we get together, oh, we need more business, we need more business. Well, you're not gonna get more business if, you know, you're trying, excuse me, if you're, you know, you wanna double the tax rate, number one. Number two, okay, now I lost my train of thought. Somebody else.
But I think if you look at New Hampshire, that doesn't hold up. The businesses are all, that's all the income.
Lowell definitely has a split, right?
This
Because
is
the
a
commercial
whole
rate
list
is
of towns.
through the roof.
And more it was just an article in one of the journals, that more and more, the burden is being shifted to the small business people. Because the big corporate, they've got the lawyers waiting for.
So that's what you want? You want the burden to be on the small businesses, which is what you're talking about here.
So can I actually comment on that, if that's okay?
Mhm.
So you don't wanna, I think Dunstable has to really look, it has to be kind of a balancing act. So obviously, we don't wanna not attract small business. However, I think if Dunstable, I'm sure many realize, maybe some people haven't, they need to start attracting seniors, childless couples, and singles. Because we don't have a negative effect on the expense, or pure revenue. So the more of those folks that you get in town, the better it's gonna be for everyone,
Well,
And you cannot attract seniors, childless couples, and singles with a school budget that is through the roof. They won't
Hey,
want to.
I agree with you 100% there. You know, the problem is that, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Well, Johnny's train is careening off the track.
Alan,
Has anybody asked the few small business folks in town what it would mean to them if their taxes were increased?
well, let me say this about that, okay? We haven't. And given the number of small businesses that we have in town, and we look at some quick math, and I'm only gonna use West as an example because he's, you know, Brian West is probably, I'm gonna guess, but it's probably true, one of the most successful small businesses in the town. He just is. And, you know, you know, are we gonna ask him, you know, Brian, listen, you have taxes and personal property taxes, and it's gonna cost you another 25 grand more a year, whatever that number is. You know, that's gonna impact his business. And so we haven't asked them, Alan, because I think collectively, and including, you know, Jason and some of the others here, we have a sense that it would drive the tax rate in an unfavorable way to them. And, you know, you get you know, Brian probably would raise his prices, but Rose of Sharon may not be able to do that. Okay, and, you know, they would be affected by it. And so, you know, you get into that whole analysis, and over the years, we've kind of just stayed away from it. And the reason for that is because we all collectively agree that it would be such a shift. It would go from the residential tax rate to the commercial tax rate. And it doesn't serve us well when we're trying to get business into the town, and we're working hard at that, small, you know, some of these small businesses to that.
It seemed to me that it would be the exact opposite of what we're trying to do in the center of town with the overlay district.
Mhm.
Whether it be a bookstore or a wine store or whatever, to say, oh, by the way, we're going to increase the commercial tax.
Well, anecdotally, we also have, like, our cruisers get, I think, in Chief Hork, and I've seen the cruisers in the parking lot at West Auto, maybe for an oil change or a service, and we're gonna end up paying for it anyways.
Mr. LaCampo.
I'm kind of like what Karen said, I'm not a school administrator, I don't know how to cut the school budget down. You kind of have to believe somebody when they tell you they need 27 nurses and 15 other people, even though I don't agree with them. But I don't know why can't Dunstable do something about a school in a building? First of all, I'm still upset the way they left our own building and our own school. They didn't even take care of their own product. But here now, they have a Rockwell school. I don't know why we're paying for it. Makes no sense to me. We have 4 other schools. I didn't know we had 5 schools until I started looking it up. What do you mean 5 schools? Now, I used to drink, so I don't know when Rockwell came here. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think Rockwell's always in part of the
Do
region.
we have kids in Belleville School?
I couldn't tell you,
Do we have kids where?
at the Belleville school.
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah,
It's
we may
possibly,
not-
but
we may
I don't
not
know.
have any kids
Well,
in
we
there.
have this, it's an $875,000 budget and a building and there's 69 students in school. It just doesn't make any sense, and we're paying for it. And so my point being is, I'm thinking that that's something more of the selectmen's job is to say, why do we have that building? Not that the educators have to do it. They have enough room in all these buildings to put those kids in one building and close that school down, and they remodel that school. And they pay for it. And we can even get a decent school giving back to us.
It's possible
That's
that,
my point.
Hang on.
possible that, you know, Groton may be, you know, paying for that. I don't know. I believe it's a town building.
The Belleville
It's part of the regional school district. That's part of their budget, it's $875,000. And we're getting a percentage of that based on the town assessment.
That is true, what she just said about that, I do know that.
Now, they all,
And it's possible that there are Groton kids or Dunstable kids in there.
It could
I think
be.
it's designed for those
Yeah,
with
there
specific
should
types of
be-
needs.
well, it's a state.
That's all I got on it.
It's a state requirement that they get the.
It's an unfunded mandate, basically.
Handicap kids under 3 years old, they have to go there. But the people that aren't, and I don't know about Dunstable, but the people in Groton can go there for $2,900 a year. Even though it costs $19,000 a year to run $2,900 to send a kid there, which is, in my opinion, daycare.
Yeah.
Pay for your own daycare. Well, I guess we have to pay for the handicap children. Put them in one of the other buildings, pull that building down. That's my opinion, and I think that's something we should attack, and save $1 million.
Hang on a
Save
second,
us
there's a
200K because we're 22% of the budget.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just want to
man
make
in
sure.
the back,
we're
I'm
clear on
sorry,
that.
did you have a question? I'm sorry, kid.
Yes, like Joan, I don't remember what my question was from 15 minutes ago. But I did want to thank Erica for doing that, that did take a ton of work. I appreciate the fact that you're in a very difficult position, because what are you gonna do? You know, you're right in that, Chessman is the CEO, and then kind of have to rely on what she tells you. I feel it's unfortunate, and I know that we could get people on the school committee, we've actually tried, it's very, very, very difficult. Even when you get members from Dunstable on the school committee, it's like 2 to
Two votes.
4, 2 to 5, and the vote doesn't even count as much, and
Right.
it's really, really, really complicated. I've tried talking to our school committee members, I've tried talking to Dr. Chesson, I've tried everything, I've tried, doing FOIA requests, to the point where she got up at a school committee meeting and said, basically, no more FOIA requests, because if you FOIA request me, and she was talking about my FOIA request, she said, I'm going to charge you for anything that takes me more than an hour or something like that. And she said, so your FOIA request would cost $7,000. So she squashed the whole FOIA request thing. We've been trying to tell them for the last 3 years that their administrative costs are through the roof, and the only answer that I got was, it's very difficult. I said, show me how many administrators you had, you know, as a percentage of your student population over the last 10 years. I just want to see that. And my answer is, well, each administration calls an administrator something different, you know, so we can't really compare apples to apples. And they can say this, and we don't call them administrator. And then when they hired the DEI coordinator, Mr. Harley, they said that, you know, they're like, well, I consider that an administrative position, and they're like, well, he's student facing. You know, it's not a teacher, doesn't work directly with them, but does interact with them, so we don't have them, you know, and, I mean, I don't know if I got that exactly right, but every question I had, you know, kind of gets turned around like that.
Okay, hold on a second. I just want one conversation, though, please.
And to some of the things that Erica, a lot of those things have been brought up. She's gonna say, a lot of your data points may be 100% accurate. She's gonna say, because we have 5 schools, it doesn't matter, it doesn't relate directly to the population, because you have to have a nurse at this school, and you have to have a nurse at this school, and you have to have a nurse at this school. And, you know, there's a big long explanation for every single thing that you say, and nothing really gets, they just have an answer for everything, is all I can say. And the reason I only got into it, I don't have kids in the school system anymore. I went to the school system, my kids graduated from the school system, I loved the school system. I wouldn't send my kids back to that school system in this day and age. I don't agree with, their priorities. And, you know, they took the ARPA money from COVID, all this talk of COVID, and they used the money and they integrated it into their, they kept it and they integrated it into their budget, and now they call that level services. So they keep saying, I want to keep level services, I want to keep level services, and I'm saying, why don't we keep level services from pre-COVID, which, you know, 2019 going into 2020, because that's the budget that you should be using and presenting to the town, not the budget that the state or the federal government gave you a whole bunch of money, and then you had your budget with it, and now that's your level services. If you talk to any teacher, and they're so hesitant to talk to you, they just won't do it. So, they'll tell you that there's a ton more administrators. And if you talk to the administration, they'll tell you that there aren't any more administrators, and there's no real way to get to the bottom of it. I mean, this administration came in and they got rid of, pretty much every field trip. They get rid of the Washington DC field trip, which has been a staple for probably the last 50 years. For 3 years, maybe 4 years. 2 of those, they could blame on COVID, and the rest of it, they just said it wasn't equitable to have that particular field trip. And with a lot of pushback from certain people, they finally re-implemented it, but again, the priorities are, I guess, all over the place. And to just jump to the test scores, maybe some kids can't test, but that's a constant. For the last 50 years, some kids haven't been able to test. So whether it's an indication of educational excellence or not, testing, those test scores shouldn't have changed. So if they're dropping, even if you don't want to use that as a measure of how good of school they are, you should be able to use that as some type of measurement tool, because the kids haven't changed. The kids haven't changed. There's always things that haven't been able to test. So it would just be nice if we could have something, and I brought it up to the school committee millions of times. We're not going to be able to figure it out. We can't break into that. They kind of like hold the key to what they're doing. And you can't, they're just going to, like you said, they're going to spend every single number and every single day point to exactly what they want to say, and you're never going to get past it, ever, under any circumstances. And if we could just have an independent auditor just go in. I mean, I don't know if this person exists, but I say it all the time. I just want somebody that does this. Look at school budgets completely objectively, and just give them the school budget, and then they just look at it and just say,
They exist.
You know?
Yeah.
They do exist, and Groton Dunstable has had one done, not recently, maybe 5 years ago. Yeah, all right, that's about right.
If you can find anybody in
That
town
was
who works
done,
for
so-
like Bain or McKinsey or Booz and Allen, those are the people you want to ask.
Hang on, Joni, you're
Not
up.
Deloitte, but you want
Forget.
Bain or McKinsey.
Ma'am in the back, I'm sorry.
Tell me about
It just sounds like, obviously the school committee should have more of a change than you guys could, but there are checks and balances too, that you mentioned earlier, that you guys listen and ask questions and give pushback and stuff, so that there is something too that you guys could do for it as well.
Oh, I've gone to plenty of their meetings. I've seen Erica there. I've been not encouraged to ask questions. So,
Right.
I talk to school committee member rep once or twice a week, and I'm at a loss. I'm like, hey, if you want this override to pass, you better work for it, because I worked my ass off last year to try to get us another police officer, firefighter, and highway person. It didn't work out. So
No,
That's the school
Yeah,
committee.
That's, I lost by 6 votes last year, so
That's what is going to make people not vote for me. I want to support the town.
Joni,
write it down, Joan.
Okay. Listen, there was an article in the Groton Herald a while ago now. It was by Marlene Gilbert, who writes for them now. She was the school committee chair for many years. And her article maintains that Groton Dunstable has, for the most part, recouped its, learning losses. Okay, and this was, like I said, this is coming from her. So, I believe her. The fact that, we're not, if they're saying now at this point that, the kids are lagging behind, according to her, that is not the case.
But it's right there on.
Number one.
It's right there on the board, that long behind.
And they've fallen behind pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, 2 years pre-COVID.
Alan?
On a happier note, we are going to be selling water to Pepco. It turns out that we have one of the best public water supplies in terms of quality and amount in the state. And this is gonna be really neat. Pepco needs our water because they've got 3 wells. One's condemned, one's iffy, and the other one so far is okay.
I know.
By the way, the 2 town wells here in Dunstable, the last 3 conservation purchases were made all in that area. All in the area that the state requires, be protected, to keep this water supply good.
All right, Mr.
And
Flynn,
a study-
hang on a second. Mr. Flynn?
I've seen here and there some discussion, and I think that Jason was entering some sort of discussion with Groton. If we've got such an intractable route, why don't we look into pulling out?
It'd be more expensive.
Why don't we look to pulling out?
I also saw some article, it wasn't very deep, so there wasn't a lot of information in it, but what does the state say about a town contracting with private schools?
The average.
So there, I mean, we did have a meeting back a few months ago. And the meeting it was intended, and it was clearly focused on Dunstable's management objective to pull out of the school district, okay? And so there are a number of factors that play into that. But there was a point in time, and I know Alan is here, there was a point, and maybe you, I don't know, where the students were in fact schooled out. I think Carol Bacon went to Lowell High School. I think Dana Metzler went to Nashua High School.
And we were tuition below high for 3 generations. It went from a 4-room grade school here into 2,800 kids at Lowell High. I was lost for the first 2 weeks. I didn't know where I was. And we survived pretty well, actually.
So to answer your question, those, that effort is not lost at this point in time, but contractually, we need to notify the district 3 years before we pull out of the agreement. That gives us sufficient time to hire a consultant and work through all of the issues before we take that on. And so it's still an active management objective from the town, but it has not been looked at in granularity to understand how much it's going to cost us and how does it all work. The Swallow School would become a grade school, and there are all these different scenarios that have been played out. But all the folks that filled that room that night, and there were probably somewhere around 150, maybe 200 people in this room that night. I think and some of you may have been here. I think the general feeling is that they did not want to separate from the school district. Everyone was just concerned about it, but the reality is, still today, we may be faced with that. I don't know. There's still a significant amount of work that needs to get done that will put this thing into the right perspective and allow an intelligent decision to be made as to whether or not the town can or cannot pull out of the district. Now, I will tell you that several years ago, maybe
2016-17 study evaluated.
was done. We've looked at it. This is not our first whack at this. This, you know.
I think it was 2017.
Yeah, I mean, so it was looked at back then, and it was essentially not a financially favorable position that we were gonna put the school district in. Because they were going to lose significant state monies by not being a regional school community. And that, I can't remember all the details that were in their report. It
was also that the town couldn't afford the school. Like we can't afford to run our own school, because then you have to have your own superintendent. I mean, there's so many different plays.
You gotta
That
have
was-
teachers.
That was when the cost, the yearly increases were 3 and 4%.
Right.
The yearly increases now
Are 12%.
are, right, 12 or 14, they started out at 14%. So, you know.
Absolutely. The
it's
dynamic is very
ridiculous to say
different.
that it's, you know, not something that should be looked at.
Yep.
And, you know, once, if we do separate, you know, that means that Groton, of course, they'd have to approve it, which they probably wouldn't, because they would owe us millions and millions of dollars. So, you know, right there, we'd have a little nest egg to, you know, do whatever we needed to do, but they would have to buy us out of our share of all these buildings.
But this, just so that you understand, the separation from the school district and the motivation to do that is this ballooning cost of, you know, I mean, we can't take 12 and 13% increases from them consecutively year after year after year without significant tax overrides. And so it becomes non-cost effective for us to stay in. And to Joni Simmons's point, you know, back then it was 3 or 4%. Now it's 12, and it's not just 12 for 1 year. This thing is rolling over from 1 year to the other. It's, you know, and so something is going to go wrong here quick. But I want, for those that are here tonight and those that are listening to us on TV, I will tell you, and we, as a board, we're going to tell you that this proposed override in the funding of the schools only, it solves this problem immediately, because there are no other options, quite frankly, to resolve this. We've stripped the police department, we've stripped the fire department, you know, we've stripped the highway department, and we've tapped everything we possibly could and cut and held positions from being filled. And, you know, it's just, there's just no more left that we could do. And that override is central. It is absolutely central to the functionality of the town on a go-forward basis into the next fiscal year. Or else, I don't know. I can tell you, a cake sale is not going to help us out.
And the school district doesn't give a damn.
Yeah, they don't, that's the problem.
They do not give a damn until somebody steps on their neck. You know, that's what it's gonna take, and Groton has to do it. They have to vote down this override and send these guys back to the drawing table to redo this budget.
And last school based on comments I've seen on social media.
The last school committee meeting I went to, they said that it was stripped down, they will
Oh,
not cut another dollar. That's what they said. I'm like, you guys are reading.
They have, what, have they cut anything?
No,
Have they
they're
cut
only
anything out of the budget?
nothing or these 33 teachers, but we can't do anything.
All right, nothing for 33 teachers, and that, I said something to Dr. Chesney the other night here about, oh, there's gotta be something in between. You telling me if this gets voted down in Groton, that you have no choice but to cut 33 teachers, and it's all blah, 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 blah. You know, they would be preparing, you know, an assortment of choices for them to go to, but that's what's needed.
12% this year,
Oh,
it's gotta
I'm
be
running out of
12%
time,
next
so,
year.
yeah, I'll let you go.
5-year projection, and then we're gonna do it again at the end of 5 years.
That's right.
All right, we do need to, I'm gonna lose my quorum tonight in this board, so just one more question from Eric, and then we're gonna close this and move on to the next agenda item.
And just really quick comments. So one, as far as the commercial tax rate, I understand we do want to attract businesses, we don't turn them away, but I think there's other things we can do to still attract the business and still raise the rate. Say, and I don't know what's legal again, I'm not a lawyer, but couldn't you say, okay, for 2 years, we'll give you a reduced rate, then we bump you up. You've got yourself situated after 2 years, then we'll increase the rate. There's other ways to kind of balance it. And as far as the school, I think, I'm withdrawn, I just lost my train of thought again, but I
You're too young for that.
think, I'm really not, and it happens a lot these days, but I really am hopeful, based on comments I've seen on the Groton social media sites, that they will do that, because I really think that we have to push back on schools. I have no problem with the town's municipal budget, none whatsoever.
Great job.
It's the school, I have a problem with the school. They are out of control and there's no accountability. And so if you want me to give it the same presentation in the school budget, happy to do it.
All right,
I
we're
wouldn't, I
gonna,
would run for election on the school.
we're gonna
If I
move
were you.
along, here now. For those that were here and participated with us, thank you, but we do need to move along. We're gonna lose our quorum here, so thank you, everyone. And Erica, there'll be some follow-up from us, either myself, Jason, or there'll be some follow-up within the next week on moving this forward to more information. All right,
Could I just have one visual?
uh-oh,
You take dollar bills, you stack them on that floor.
yeah,
How much do you think $55 million is?
I don't know.
13 and a half times the Empire State Building.
In dollar bills.
Pretty high stack of dollar bills.
All right, FY '25 operating budget. Jason, do you wanna, is this,
I think we've run through this a
This
I think
is,
we have
bunch of
to.
times, and I don't necessarily need to have them run through it again.
Yeah, I don't either.
I just,
What would you like us to do, Jim?
so in order for us to vote on the ballot question, the ballot question needs to be grounded in a approved budget by the board.
Mhm.
And so, the budget that we've talked about over the last several months
Mhm.
just needs to be, considered by the board and, hopefully approved, so that then we can vote a ballot question later on down the agenda, so that we can start printing ballots for April 2nd. We need to give that 35 days in advance. We have to give the question to the clerk.
Okay.
The 35-day drop dead deadline is a week from today.
And advisory is okay with this?
I've talked to Jake about it.
Okay.
Yes, Jake is on board. Jake is,
So do we,
the board has,
so you want us to go through this budget tonight? Is that what you're asking for?
yes.
Mr. K, do you want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the budget as presented for the fiscal year 2025.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye.
Do you need to read out the precise numbers here? I guess no, this is for the override. It doesn't matter.
Okay. All right, next up on our agenda is, I'm not sure, Brattle, Mr. Brattle?
I think it was really for us to ideally take a vote on site rattle group, the proposal, because the technical reviews have been done, and so have the other groups that have met with the property owner.
And so I'm gonna ask that we defer that to our next meeting so that we have a full board.
Okay.
It's typically the way we've operated, that we've always had full boards when we make significant decisions.
Yeah, I think we should let Mr. Tully know, so he's aware.
So this is gonna go on the docket for our next select board meeting.
Better idea.
And we've, and So March,
whatever the
March
next
5th
meeting
is
was.
Tuesday.
I
March
don't have
5th, the
my
next one?
calendar opened up.
And you have all the feedback we received from
Yep.
boards and committees, both police and fire chiefs, so.
Yep.
You have everything in there.
All right, moving
So
on,
would that mean, to engage in that to sign the agreement, or is it another discussion?
no, it's to authorize a signature to the LIP agreement.
Okay.
At which point we would enter negotiations, likely, depending if it's for real estate,
And when's your next meeting?
The 5th.
March 5.
Does that give Jason and us enough time to put everything together we need to, probably, maybe? If not, we can push it,
I
right?
think everything's together.
Yeah,
I think everything is together. We just need her
If we had
here.
our full board, we would have voted.
We need a full board.
Of the magnitude that we probably want to have all three of us here.
Yeah, we have to probably cross a couple more Ts on some of that.
If there are Ts and Is that need to be dotted and crossed, you two
And
guys gotta get that worked
Well,
out.
so in advance of a vote by the board, does the board want, we've talked about in the past, like a land development agreement of some kind that stipulates some of the benefits to the town.
Mhm.
That could be part of the process. If you want something like that in place, then we'd have to get to work on that. Is that,
Do we need that?
Well, it would be, so as a result of the proposal and us signing off on it, it's is the property owner donating a boat or a piece of land, and we would want to have that ironed out with the proposal and the application, correct, or no? Is that separate?
I think that's a separate
That's
piece of
separate
it,
or not?
right?
It could be
As long
whatever
as
you
it's
want.
as long as
the board,
it's teed up and we're all on the same page,
It's
that's
the-
probably okay.
it all depends on the information the board needs in order to make the vote. If you want an agreement to have clarity on exactly what the benefits are to the town before a vote, then we should do it before. If you don't think that's necessary, and you have it based on all the information and the presentations and the proposal that you've received, if you have good enough understanding of that from the information you have to date, then we don't have to do that. It would be up to the board.
I
Well,
think for
yeah, go ahead.
clarity's sake, though we've all had some general conversations and such, I think as a board member, I'd want to have it down in writing. So it's something we can stamp and sort of hold ourselves accountable for. And then the property manager, the owner, has something that they're held accountable for. And then it's sort of a mutual benefit for both groups to be working in unison. And that we know, here's our expectation, here's their expectation, and what's the end result look like. So that if there's anything that comes up along the way, we have sort of a plan of action in the event that doesn't work out.
So I think, to Karen's point, you guys ought to have some discussion, because this agreement, once it's signed, we are not in a negotiating strategy, right?
Well,
And
you
it's-
kind of still are because it's the lip, but we still have to wait on the state anyway.
But I think that what we want to do is, if there's quid pro quo, we want to try to get all that worked out.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, because it locks the property owner into the application, also locks us in as a town. So it sort of works both ways.
You
And you will.
can actually back out anytime.
And you can consider both as you're
Your
making the
signature
decision.
doesn't bind you.
It's only as good as long as you're elected.
So what is it, the 5th or the 19th? Is that?
The 5th.
Goes it? So,
Let's try to get this moved forward, because he's got a 60-day clock that's almost at the end.
I know. Do our best to get to the 5th.
Well, both of you have not much to do. Pay attention to this.
Yeah.
All right. Chugging along, item number 7, ballot questions and warrant for special town election on April 2.
No questions from me here.
No, I mean,
But
think-
so the only motion needs to be read is the special town election ballot question draft motion.
Yes.
yes,
I'll move to approve the following questions for the ballot at the 2024 special town election and to provide written notice of such questions to the town clerk in accordance with Mass General Law, Section 54, or Chapter 54, Section 42C. Question 1. Shall the town of Dunstable be allowed to assess an additional $2,074,351 in real estate and property taxes for the purpose of funding the operating budget of the town and the assessment of the Groton Dunstable Regional School District for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024? Yes or no?
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Godspeed.
That's what I heard. Appointment to the Master Plan Committee, Select Board Representative.
I think I volunteered for that already. So I thought I
think
did.
that's what I understood too.
Yeah.
Do you need us
A
to?
glutton for punishment.
So,
Just make a
just
motion.
to be clear though, so you represent Board of Selectmen and affordable housing,
Yes.
okay?
Now, wait a second now. What, yeah, would that be a conflict?
I
There
don't
is
think
like,
so because we're just short on
Carol
people.
Bacon's representing 2 boards as
Yeah.
well.
Was she?
Yeah,
We just don't have.
I mean, Leah said I talked to her earlier and she was, well, saying she said she could do it if the board needed her.
Well,
If
No, she's committed pretty good to a whole lot of other things, so
Okay.
if he's volunteered it,
just make the motion.
then I'm gonna move that we appoint Karen as the Select Board Representative to the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. ARPA, relocation request.
Yes, this was a motion for us to use some of our remaining ARPA funds for the purpose of mailing out the most recent What's Going On newsletter that has been pretty popular online, but I think the goal was physically mail it to everyone's address in town, because we do have some folks that aren't on our email servers. Some people are getting off Facebook, which is probably a blessing, and not everyone looks at Nextdoor, so I don't know the exact number.
So we don't either,
Okay.
actually. The motion was the ask was to approve up to 1,000, but it will be less, it will be
it's like 300.
substantially less than that.
I'll make a
So
motion.
Including.
up to 1,000.
Postage, so
Yeah,
You
right.
get a bill, you got an invoice here for $309.
It's not postage, though.
That's just the print.
Okay, because I'm looking at this going, I think the last time we did this thing cost us $900, didn't it?
Yeah.
How you doing with that? So this
That's
is,
why I asked up to 1,000, but
All
the
right.
printing on this
Selling
was,
cookies at the end of my driveway. So.
I'll do a lemonade.
printing on this was cheaper, and so I think it will be significantly less, but just in case.
Okay, so we'll put a motion for $1,000 placeholder for the town administrator to print and mail the quarterly newsletter. How about that?
Second, as Ron said.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
One more thing about that, I did hear back from Lowell Tech, and they did say they could help us out for the next one.
Okay.
We just have to pay for materials.
They would, no, they would, I didn't hear what, they would what?
They would do the printing for us, we just need to pay for materials,
That's kind of fun.
The paper
the paper, yeah.
and the ink, I guess, right?
Yeah, so he'll let me know how much that would be for next time.
Go to Lowell Tech.
Yep.
Graphic arts.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Excellent.
That is pretty neat.
Um,
All right, next item 10, do you have anything else on that?
No.
Item 10, town administrators report.
I think we covered most of it.
I think so.
I think you're good. I think you're good.
Is there anything you want to add here? Any embellishments?
No, you're good.
You sure?
Yeah.
The only thing I had, looking at number 11, was, I know there's a piece of farmland for sale up on High Street that has a couple historical buildings on it. I know I'm not trying to prompt our CPC to look at it, but It's 4 acres.
The Melansons.
The Melansons
It's
have both.
overpriced.
It is.
Way overpriced.
It is, but it's also backs up to Salmon Brook, and the one across the street backs up to, and no one's gonna build a house there.
How much do they want for?
300K. No, 300K.
Oh, down the next door.
Yeah, across
For
the
the
street.
house, I think it was 875.
825 for, but the one across the street is 4 acres. It backs up to Salmon Brook. It is overpriced and it has some cleanup to it, but it might be something for our CPC Historical Commission to look into, because it has 2 historical barns on there in line with what Mr. Cheney would typically say. It protects that estuary and feeder there. Just an idea. And we have a good chunk of change in that bucket.
Never ending.
It doesn't help the revenues.
It's not helping them right now.
Hey, I started to say, there was a study done quite a while ago that said, you know, as far as helping your bottom line, your best bet is some type of business, because that's not putting people in the school and you're getting a little bit of a return. The next is open space.
You're
The very last is building a bunch of houses that, you know, are gonna put kids in your school and raise your services, the rates for all your services.
My thought there is there's 2 historic barns that you can't even demo. So,
Okay.
right.
What do you mean?
So they're on the National Historic Register. Yeah. So like to destroy, like there isn't, it's overpriced to whoever said that, but like no one can do really anything with that land other than just have it sit barren. It's silly. Like, why don't we just put a CR on it and let it be open field and pollinators?
What happens if somebody buys it and it burns to the ground? Can they put a house on it? Just asking.
Maybe.
Can I make a comment? So I think it was the same meeting on the school budget. Beth Monkowski had an excellent idea. If you have 2 historical barns, she was talking about like ecotourism.
Mhm.
Maybe you could do something with that property in line with that using the barns. I don't know, but I'm just saying, maybe you could actually make some money.
The private landowner would have to take that deal, but sometimes,
But you have to look at how much you have to dump back into that to make it,
This is pretty.
now it's ADA accessible and it's safe and, the floors aren't falling out and there's potable drinking water for the public and there's a new system and who's gonna pay for that and how much does it take to get the first person through the door in the dollar?
True.
just a thought for our historical group and trying to work within the demo bylaws.
Land trust, you know, they're trying to figure out how to, you know, make a few bucks with,
Okay,
their.
all right.
Food barn, right?
Items not reasonably anticipated. Do you have anything?
No. Motion
Mr.
to
King?
adjourn.
Oh, wait, no, I do. Hold on.
Do you have, Sue?
Well, Jason wanted me to make sure you guys are good. We need
Oh,
to
yeah.
have a meeting on the 27th before the budget forum, because we need to approve the warrant for the special town meeting and open up the warrant for the annual town meeting. So.
So just put,
6:30 on the 27th?
yeah, just put that on the agenda just that way and post it, right? I mean, we always had kind of a dress rehearsal meeting anyway before.
Yeah.
So that's not out of character for what we're gonna do there. He's got the budget to a point where it's gonna get presented the way it is. So there isn't gonna be a lot of like years ago where we used to just be in the library 10 minutes before town meeting trying to figure out the budget.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing this time.
I didn't know you guys used to do that. Interesting.
Yeah, back in the day.
We did.
So the 3 of you are gonna be at the budget forum, or at least 2?
Well, I'm sure, because without that, we don't have a quorum.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna post for town meeting too as well, because this,
Yeah.
right, so it kind of all be, right, good, all right.
Excellent.
Anything else? Anything else, Sue? All right, then good. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Time. The more people walk out.
Pee before I get stuck in the conversation.